Today I'm talking to Morgan Grant Buchanan, who has co-written Babylon Confidential with Claudia Christian, and he's also worked on a number of other projects, many of which have a sci-fi focus. Hello, Morgan.
Hi, Nalini. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a writer and a Tai Chi teacher. I started writing way back when I was in high school, but seriously, sort of in my university days, I was very heavily involved in comic books in Australia. So I was writing for some of the comic book titles that were around at the time. So Zero Assassin. I had my own title called Disciple. There was another comic I edited called City's Angel. So yeah, it was good times. And then after that, I sort of just worked privately on my writing and pursued a career in graphic design and web design. And then I got back into writing in 2008, with a science fiction short movie called Barrier that I worked on with Claudia Christian. And the premise of that was that it was a space race movie. So we had, it was fully shot on green screen, sort of like Star Wars, and it was about racing teams in outer space who were competing to win a prize. And Claudia played a racing engineer who was dead, so she starts the story already deceased, and she leaves behind a holographic message for the racing teams to give them the challenge that these two particular parties are going to fight over. And that was a lot of fun. So I was 1/3 producer and screenwriter on that, and we completed it. We shot it down at Channel 10 here in Melbourne and in Los Angeles. Claudia shot her part in LA. And then Sheldon Whitaker, who is the amazingly talented CGI person, put them all together and built environments around all the actors and built space races around all of the guys who were sitting there in the studio in chairs, sort of doing all this kind of stuff, pretending they were in a space race. And it came up really well. So then after that, I sort of kept my relationship going with Claudia, and then since then we've been working on a whole bunch of different projects. I'm also involved in a whole bunch of personal projects with novels, comic books, children's book, some short stories that I've also collaborated on. So yeah, it's a busy writing time.
When did you first know that you wanted to become a writer?
Very, very easy answer to that question. I think I was in grade 5, down on the Oval in primary school, walking along with my best friend, and he said, "I want to be an actor." And I thought that sounded pretty neat. So I said, "Well, I want to be an actor too." He says, "Oh, you're just copying me. I'm going to be a writer and you can be an actor." And I said, "Well, actually, I want to be a writer too." And he says, "Oh, no, now you're just doing everything I do. I'm going to be an actor again." I said, "Okay, you be an actor and I'll stay being a writer." And I thought that sounded pretty neat. That's exactly, I thought, no, I'm not going to switch back again. That's it for me. And he did go on to be an actor. He was in a bunch of TV shows here in Australia. And I kept going with my writing. So I guess it's sort of something I've always done. When I was in high school, I used to write comedy novels with my friends as characters to entertain them. So it's I guess it's just something that's built into your DNA. You just know you want to do it.
Oh, that sounds great. With regards to Barrier, I went looking for it on IMDb and I didn't find it. Where can we find more information about Barrier?
I think the whole thing is available for free online. I think you can, if you just type, I think it's barrier.tv. You can check that out. I think the whole, it runs for about 16 or 17 minutes. It's a short movie. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's fully CGI, green screen, Star Wars, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you can go check that out.
I'll have to look it up.
It's screened at a number of conventions and film festivals, and I think the producer and creator of that series, I didn't create it, I was the screenwriter on it, is using that short movie now to go on and try to seek funding to get a feature or a TV series developed.
Oh, well, we need more sci-fi on TV. We really do.
No, especially stuff made locally in Australia. There's a lot of great stuff coming out of the States, but, we're always poorly represented in terms of genre here in Australia, so the more the better.
Yes, and I mean, Farscape was made here and it was fabulous. But it was a joint production. It seems like Australia wants somebody else to take the lead role or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we're a bit timid to sort of jump in. And sci-fi, fantasy, horror, it attracts almost zero film funding as well. You can't get any money from the government. But that doesn't stop a lot of sort of independent people just coughing up their own money or seeking independent funding and having a crack at it. And as a result, we've had some great stuff come out of Australia. Wolf Creek was really good horror stuff. There's some really frightening sort of horror coming out lately. That seems to be the current trend, not so much sci-fi and fantasy, but good luck to them. Hopefully the sci-fi and fantasy will follow in suit.
Well, Iron Sky was a classic, not so much, it was only partially made in Australia, but I think it got partial funding from Australia as well as being significantly crowdfunded.
Yeah, great. I mean, those new options like Kickstarter and things like that are just fantastic. I haven't had the chance to look into them fully yet, but there's a few projects that might go Kickstarter way depending on how they end up. So
that'd be awesome.
It's wonderful. Power of social networking. I mean, we sold out the first print run of Babylon Confidential just on the power of social media because Claudia's got that wonderful fan base and they're willing to support and get behind the book. So it's an amazing thing. Yes,
I know lots of people who love Ivanova.
Yes, there's no shortage of them. Well, she's very lovable, and there's a big overlap between Ivanova and Claudia as a person. You know, they're both very strong-willed. They're both very kind and generous. You know, I think there's a lot of Ivanova in Claudia.
What authors have most influenced your writing?
Well, I'm a big comic book nut, so I'd have to say, in terms of my teenage reading, writers like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman had a big influence on me. But then classics, I read a lot of classics. I write sci-fi, but also a lot of historical fantasy. So I love any ancient world classics, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, things like that make up a large part of my reading now. I like magical realism, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I'm a Tai Chi teacher, so I tend to read a lot of Taoist poetry and just poetry in general.
So how have you made the transition from, you mentioned earlier you were a graphic designer and web designer. How have you made the transition from that career to writing full-time?
It was a tough one. there's no easy path into full-time writing, I think. You just sort of have to bite the bullet and have a very supportive partner. When we started working on Barrier, I thought, well, there was a really good opportunity to move things forward and give it a shot. The reason I had an interest in graphic design or web design, but eventually you reach a point where you say, is this what I really want to do with my life? And no, I always wanted to be a writer. So, and I've been working on it quietly all this time. So I had a period of 2 years when we moved to upstate New York. My wife does astrophysics. She's an astrophysicist. And she said, look, you want to do the writing, go ahead. You just dedicate that time to doing your work every day. And so very graciously, before we had children, I went and did that. And then once we had kids, now I had just made the transition into something resembling a sustainable career. So now every morning I go out, I do my writing, and then I get another shift in the afternoon, and in between I'm sort of looking after the kids or helping teach my Tai Chi classes. So yeah, it's been slow and steady progress.
Well, I've heard a number of people say that it took them 10 years to be an overnight success.
Yes, and still waiting for the overnight success as well.
But you're getting there.
Well, we're getting there. But yeah, writing is one of those things where I think it does, the skill set you have to develop in order to do it professionally is seldom represented by the financial remuneration. It takes a hell of a long time to become a good writer. I think there are people who are naturally gifted. I recently read Roald Dahl's story of how he became a writer. And he had no thought of ever being a writer. And he was a fighter pilot during World War II. And he ran into C.S. Forester, who did the Hornblower novels, by complete accident one day. And C.S. Forester asked him all about his stories as a fighter pilot because he thought that would be good for the Saturday Evening Post, I think was the magazine at the time. And Roald Dahl said, oh, okay, I'll put something together for you. And he instead of just writing notes, he wrote a complete story, and C.S. Forrester wrote back and said, "This is perfect. I wouldn't touch a word. You weren't supposed to write a whole story, but I've submitted it. It's sold. They want more. Please keep going. You're a natural writer." And wow, that's just completely unlike my own path. I think for most people, you have an instinct that that's what you want to do, but then you have to put in a great deal of effort to have something on the page that's readable and simple and yet poignant. It takes a long time to get to that stage. It's an ongoing development of skills. So I guess there are natural people, but I think for the rest of us, we just have to work hard and slowly get better. Yes.
It kind of comes down to the elegance. For something to be truly elegant, it is simplistic, or not simplistic, but it is simple.
Yeah, and I think the Tai Chi's helped me a lot with that. I was talking before about Taoist poetry. The idea with that is just to talk about very simple things, but for them to have deep meaning. So I think the best writing is something that's very simple and devoid of cleverness, and yet is still filled with meaning. Because it simplifies things down to their most basic elements. You want to get down to that archetypal element, that sort of raw, basic feeling that people connect with. I think we're creatures of feeling, not creatures of intellect. The intellect probably plays a much smaller part. It's like the iceberg,
Yeah.
Connect with all the emotion underneath the surface. And I think as writers, that's what you have to try to connect with in terms of the audience.
Yes. On your website, it mentions that Babylon Confidential is actually the first novel it's not a novel, it's non-fiction, the first book that you've actually sold.
Yeah, that's correct. I have written a number of others, and I've also collaborated on Claudia with 2 books since 2009 that we're just in the process of finalising now. And since Babylon Confidential, we're now leading up to sales on those. So we've accepted an offer from one publisher recently, and the other one's sort of being looked at the moment. So I think this is often the case with writers. You have work kicking around, and then once you get one over the line, then it's a lot easier to sell the others.
Yes. How did you actually meet Claudia?
On Barrier. So we worked on that, and she enjoyed my writing. And then after that, I came back to her and said, well, that was a fun project. Would you like to have a shot at another one? And I pitched her an idea of a future Rome science fiction story with an Ivanova-like character called Akala Viridius. So she's sort of, young and tough and stubborn and single-minded, but also, compassionate and there for her friends and loyal and, similar qualities, but, we're not actually trying to replicate the exact same character. And Claudia, I found out, is a history nut. So she loves ancient Rome and all these other early historical periods. So it was an easy sell. She went, yes, I love that idea. That's fabulous. Let's do it. So we started developing that in 2009. We've just about finished the first draft of the first one of those novels. Hopefully there'll be 4 in the series. And so there's and that same series has also got a comic book, a graphic novel in development, and there might be some other sort of exciting sort of digital products as well associated with it. So we've had it in the works since 2009, but there's lots happening and it's just sort of starting to bubble up to the surface. So hopefully in the next few months we should have some major announcement on that.
Sounds great. So how did you actually begin collaborating on Babylon Confidential?
We were already working on 2 other projects, and that a project Claudia had already been discussing with somebody who professionally writes memoirs and works as a ghostwriter, which I'm not. I write fiction. Then they got an offer from a publisher on that project, and for a whole series of reasons, that person had to step away. They had to go to work on another project, and they couldn't work on Babylon Confidential. And then Claudia turned around to me and said, well, we're working very happily, collaborating very successfully on these other projects. Would you like to have a crack at that? So we did a little bit of work to convince the publisher and the agent that I could do it, despite the fact I'd never written a memoir before. So, we had a bit of a crack at it, and it turned out to be quite good. The collaboration was good, and the result was good. So we went ahead. And at my end, I discovered that a biography or a memoir or anything like that is just like any other story. As the reader reads it, it has to have a narrative, it has to have themes, it has to have a central character, it has to have all those elements that make a good fiction novel readable should also be in a memoir or a biography. So it wasn't as much of a jump as I thought it would be.
Okay. It's a really personal story. How did you manage to work on it? What was the process that you went through to work together, and how did you manage to keep Claudia's voice so strong with your input?
It's kind of a psychoanalytic process. We racked up maybe 50 or 60 hours of interview time. There was quite a substantial amount of interview, and we'd work at it in stages. So I had a rough map of where I wanted to head with the story, like somebody's life, beginning, middle, and end. We knew the themes we had to discuss, Claudia's alcoholism and how she overcame it. And then we took each part in turn, and I would ask her a series of questions. We did much like we're having an interview now. I'd interview Claudia, record the interview, and then afterwards I would write it all up. And as I did that, try to give it that narrative connective sense. When you're interviewing somebody and they're opening up and you're having a very good interview, the timeline can sort of range all over the place. They'll go, yes, we're talking about my childhood, but and then later on I was working on Babylon 5 and this happened, and then towards the end of my life this connected with something else. And so when you transcribe those interviews, you're trying to put it into a kind of timeline structure. So, this bit goes here, then she's talking about that's going to be later on in the book, so you throw that back to the back end of the manuscript. And so on, and then above and beyond that, so I would do those interview sessions with Claudia, write them up, then go back to her and say, now, is this how you were feeling? Is this correct? And I try to keep as close as possible to her voice from those interviews. Like it's many people have come back and said it has a kind of feeling of Claudia being in the room with you or sitting next to you at a table having a chat with you. So we try to keep that kind of fresh feeling, and we try to keep the language sort of slightly informal in places, just so it had that conversational feel. And then above and beyond that, I guess my job was to try to sit up from a very high perspective and then see the central and recurring themes that happen in a person's life, much like you would when looking at a plot for a story. And so that was a very interesting process, and one I've never been involved with before. But I sort of approached Claudia like a character, and then try to find those themes and try to depict them in a continuum that would make sense to a reader and be engaging.
Yeah. So is it difficult to switch between genres and styles?
That's kind of my MO. Like I'm kind of a cross-media writer, so I've worked on comic books, film. I've got a short story coming out in an anthology in a few months. I've done this memoir, and I also do historical fantasy and sci-fi. So no, because I've had lots of practice at switching between those. We're also working on a TV proposal with Claudia for a particular project. So that involves script writing, and so I'm used to jumping backwards and forwards. So I actually find it a pleasure. I have a low attention span. My mind wanders easily, so shifting between formats of different kinds of media, different styles, different genres, it helps keep my interest.
Okay. So you've got this ancient Rome story, and you've just published Babylon Confidential. So what other projects are coming up?
I'm working on a science fiction children's book called Robocosm with a very talented New York artist called Etan Ronka. I've got another series of books that we're in the process of pitching at the moment. So I can't say too much about them at the moment because that's sort of still in negotiation. But you know, so potentially that I've got a Victorian era supernatural detective story set in Melbourne, Australia. That is pretty much done and in the process of being sold. So that should be coming out in the next few years. One of the things I always thought I should write a short book called 100 Things Nobody Ever Told Me About Being a Professional Writer. And one of them would certainly be how slow the publishing cycle is. Everything has a very long lead time. It's kind of like the film industry as well. So if it might take, you might submit your manuscript a year before the book will even be out on the shelves, or even a year and a half. So a lot of these projects we're talking about now will probably be available in sort of 1 to 2 years' time. We're in discussions with the company at the moment about doing some game books, some app game books and stuff based on some of the properties that we're developing. And if things go, maybe a TV series at some point in the future. It's actually very busy. I'm trying to. I think I worked it out the other day. I was sitting with a writer friend, and I worked out I've got about 16 projects on the go at the moment in various stages of development. I've got a very personal project called Aspect Moon, which will be launching in the first quarter of next year, which is something I'm going to be offering online for free, and it's a series of dream fables. So every night I have very vivid dreams, and when I wake up I write them down, and then after I've written them down I write a short story, a short one-page story based on those dreams. And I'm going to be collaborating with a number of artist friends to have them illustrated as well. And that's something we're just going to be offering for free online. I think there's something about sort of the overlapping nature of dreams. I have this feeling that if I share my dreams and these little fables based on them, that it will resonate with other people who have similar dreams, similar archetypes. Appearing in their own nighttime fantasies, I guess.
This kind of offering something for free is something that like Brandon Sanderson does, and Chris Straub, and I can't remember the name of the guy he works with. But yeah, offering something free to fans to as a thank you for supporting you.
Yeah, so Claudia and I just recently did that with Red Fury, which is a Babylon 5 fanfic novelette. 12 or 13, 14,000 words, something like that. And we sold out the first print run of the book before it even got launched on the shelves. And you need to give something back. That's a wonderful show of support. We had a chat about what we could do, and we thought, well, we're writing and we're going to start. We're about to be launching some fiction work in our collaboration as well. So something that gives the fans a thank you, but also introduces them to Claudia and I as a fiction writing entity would be a good thing. And so we wrote a Susan Ivanova story. As you know, with season 4 of the show, she kind of just vanished at the end, and the character never had much of a finale. She didn't have the exit that she deserved. The gravitas that she brought to the show. So although this isn't an exit stage right kind of story, it is a kind of final Susan Ivanova adventure that we thought would be more in line with the keeping of the character, something dramatic and exciting. And so the feedback we're getting from the fans is that they got that from it. So we're very happy.
Well, that's excellent. Do you have a favourite character in your writing?
At the moment, it depends on the book I'm writing at the time, I guess. At the moment, it'd have to be a Carla. Claudia and I are working back and forth with the first book, which is currently called Ice Station Legionary. And she's young and headstrong. She's 17 years old, so she sort of rushes in and thinks later. She's a very enjoyable, very fun character to write. She's a teenager taking her first steps into a very dangerous world. So she's very well prepared. She thinks she is. She's very well trained, very well equipped, but she quickly learns that life in the galactic Roman Empire is much more dangerous and complex than she first thought. So it's a lot of fun. Claudia and I having a lot of fun working with her.
One of the things that was really appealing about Ivanova in Babylon 5 were some of her lines, and general consensus is she had some of the best lines in the series. Is this character going to have similar lines?
Yes. I mean, you hope so. As a writer, you hope that what you bring is compelling and engaging dialogue. Sure, I hope so. But the readers will let you know, I'm sure. So we'll have to wait and see. But Claudia and I are doing our best.
In much of your work, you're collaborating with a variety of different people on different projects. What are some of the different ways collaborations work?
There's only two ways collaborations work. They either work well or terribly. And luckily, I've had excellent collaborators. If you choose your partners well, then it all tends to work out. And the main rule is just to keep the lines of communication open, especially when you're working via distance. But thankfully, with things like Skype and the internet, email and so on, that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, it's about mutual respect, listening, communicating, and then you have a very positive experience. And because I came from a comic book background, I really love collaborating with people. I really enjoy it. So whenever I get the chance, I do, and it's a different experience than writing on your own. But especially collaborating with artists is a great kick, because you write up a script and then you slowly see it sort of come to life as they depict it. So yeah, there's a different experience between working with an artist and working with another writer. They're always rewarding, otherwise I wouldn't keep doing them.
When you worked on Babylon Confidential, you said you basically interviewed Claudia and then you put it together as a book, trying to keep her voice. But even writing with Claudia in the fiction book, isn't that a different process? Completely
different. Babylon Confidential, what would happen is I would write up that sort of first draft based on the interview, and then Claudia would work that over as well. So it was a writing collaboration as well. Like, she would take notes and say, no, I didn't say that, no, that's not quite me, and and then give me that feedback, and then I would edit it again, send it back, get it reviewed, edit it again. We went back and forth many, many times to get it just so that her feeling was expressed, her words were on the page, and in that capacity, I'm credited on the book, but I'm a ghostwriter essentially. My job is to try to get out the way as much as possible and bring Claudia's story forwards, her story and her words, to bring her presence onto the page.
Mm. And when you're writing with the Galactic Roman Empire story, what's the process there?
We work on a plot and then we divvy it up. So I work on one part, she works on the other part, and then we bring it all together. We use track changes in Microsoft Word, so lots of back and forth. So Claudia will, at the moment, the part I'm working on is we break it up into, this current one's broken up into 6 parts. So Claudia's done part 4, and I'm currently doing a workover of Claudia's section of that part of the book. And she's looking at working over one of my parts of the book. So we revise each other's work and then bring it back together, and then we'll do one sort of super edit at the end.
How difficult is it to maintain a similar feel and flow of the book throughout?
I guess, if you know the characters and you've established the world, like we do that in the beginning when we're working out the plot, we're working out what the characters are, what the stakes are going to be, how it's all going to go. And then also you have to have room for the story to move around inside those boundaries. But actually there's less issue than you'd think. We kind of have a very similar sort of voice. And then you do need to give it one sort of edit at the end, one sort of super edit to make sure that voice is consistent all the way through. But yes, it's all working out very well, I'm happy to say.
Oh, good. What challenges have you had to work through?
In terms of the collaboration?
Yeah. Or in terms of any of the collaborations that you've had?
I don't know. I mean, I guess as long as you're communicating, as long as you're talking over anything that comes up. I can't think of a specific instance, to be honest. but no, we're mostly, with all the collaborations I'm working on, if you can successfully communicate, you avoid problems. So no, I'm struggling to think of an instance where it's gone wrong. It's actually all going quite well. So yeah. The challenges are just a pleasure. I mean, the only real challenge is getting the product out at the end and making sure it's aesthetically pleasing, that it reads well or looks good or is on the page if it's a drawing or a film. So just keep communicating, keep working together, and the number one rule is make sure at the end of the day you've got your finished product. I think any collaboration is a failure if even if you love the process and at the end of the day there's no book or no children's book or no movie or no comic, then you haven't succeeded.
So you've got to keep your eyes on the prize.
You do. It's like with anything. You've got to have your fixed goal, and then you've got to work collaboratively together at each stage moving forward towards it. And I've done enough collaboration now that I'm reasonably streamlined with that process. I know how to make sure that all the scales are evenly balanced moving forward towards the end. And I think the film one was interesting. There was challenges there because I'd never worked on a short film before, and so there were so many people involved. So you've got the creator of the show, and who's also the producer. Then you've got the director. Then you've got all the actors. So you'll write a script, and then they'll come into rehearsal, and then they'll be sort of modifying the script as they go, and then you'll be doing rewrites during the rehearsals. And then on the day, there'll even be rewrites and reworking of things. So that was a different experience. You kind of have to let go as a writer and let the whole process just sort of deliver the product. Where things could have gone wrong is if I'd sort of been too attached to the script and wanted it to stay exactly how it was. Sometimes things read very well on the page, but in the actor's mouth, it's not quite right. So you have to give them the space to ad-lib or to rewrite on the fly to allow them to bring what they need to the scene.
One thing I've been noticing, particularly with regards to screenwriting and directing lately, I've watched Crime Traveller, which is kind of a B-grade 1990s sci-fi show, and there were big pauses. It's like there wasn't enough script. There were scenes where people were repeating each other, where they missed the snappy line that just, I was waiting for it and it didn't come. And then more recently, I'm watching Charmed, and it's a bit too, it's made by people who make soapies, and it's a little bit too soapy. Like, it could have been brilliant as Buffy, but it's just a bit too slow and a bit too melodramatic. How do you avoid these traps?
Different screenwriting. It's funny, there's this thing with screenwriting where however it is on the page, when you write it, it can play fast or slow when it hits action. So I think there's two elements of that. The screenwriter, you do need to keep things pacey and moving forwards. As with a good novel, there needs to be a direction and a sense of things moving, and the dialogue should be driving that forwards. And then there's a part that's outside of your control, which is where the director and the production team takes over the actors. So, if you've got a director who's guiding the actors in a certain way, or you've got actors who are delivering your lines in a certain way, you can't do anything about that. You just have to live with the end product. But, somebody like Joss Whedon, with that kind of screenwriting where it's moving very fast all the time and the dialogue's very snappy, very pacey, that's what you can do as a screenwriter in order to try to prevent that happening as much as possible on the back end. So
you maybe even err on the side of providing more dialogue than is necessary, so some can end up on the cutting room floor?
No, I think you've got to pace it right. You've got to provide. It's like with a novel, how much is too much? You never. As a Taoist and as a writer, you always want to try for the mean, the right balance point. I try to overwrite. I don't want to try to underwrite, and then however it comes out in the end, it comes out.
Okay. Is there a dream project that you'd like to work on?
Ironically, and I know the pun wasn't intentional, but yes, I am actually, that dream project I mentioned before, that's kind of my heart project at the moment, Aspect Moon. So yeah, that'll be coming out next year, and yeah, that sort of commercial-free project where you're just offering up yourself, your sort of inner world. I find that idea very interesting, and it came about organically, in a very organic way, because I'd never thought of sharing it. I'd been writing my dreams down for about 10 years in these journals, just out of interest. It's such, when you have vivid dreams and you write them down, you can look back and you can see unusual patterns. And there's also this phenomenon where you can have a very vivid dream and you write it down, and within a day or two, it's lost. It just kind of fades away. And then when you go back and look at what you wrote, oh yeah, and it starts to come back again.
Yeah.
And if you anchor it with words, then there's this whole part of your life that's missing. And it's a very interesting process, and it's one I'm really interested in exploring. And just recently I had this idea. These are very much like little stories or little fables. And wouldn't it be great just to put one up a week? They're only little one pages, so it's not a big excursion out from my professional work, or my paid, scheduled, contracted work that I have to do. But it's also something very fulfilling, and something that I can just share and see what the audience reaction is. Maybe they'll love it, maybe they'll hate it. But as an artist, you're always looking for ways to offer up a part of your own inner world, your own inner insight, into the community to see what their reaction is going to be. So it's a little bit scary, a little bit interesting, very different from the other stuff I'm doing. So yeah, that's kind of where my main heart is at the moment. I'm still enjoying and loving the other work, but that's kind of literally my dream project. And
also, there's not the excessive lead time with working with a publishing house.
No, and that's another big thing that's firing up about that project. I just love the idea of just going, and I type the stories. So I write them down in a dream journal, and I type them up on my typewriter, and then scan them, and I can put them up as an image and share them straight away. So I love that immediacy. I love getting the idea of getting the immediate feedback. The book Claudia and I are writing now, the publisher doesn't even want to see it until October next year, and then it'll be October to November, then the year after before it's on the shelves. So the great thing about online publishing is the immediacy of it. And I kind of like the fact that there's this new trend coming up with online writers. The audience wants product, they want content. So if they a vampire series or something, they want that book. The quality writing is important, but audiences want content. So I think things are going to have to, the traditional publishing model, as effective as it is going to have to speed up to catch up, or they're going to have to come up with some middle ground model where sort of a pulp model, like we used to have with pulp books that you don't see so much now. So more genre pulp fiction, I think, will have to arise to meet the audience. The audience is expecting it. They get it online. They get. I can't remember her name now. There was a lady who just got $1 million advance for a vampire series that was already very successful, supernatural romance, very successful online. And she was churning these books out very quickly to meet the audience demand, and good on her. So I think that they want books quick. They don't want to have to wait 2 or 3 years between each book. So the publishers are going to have to come halfway at some point.
Yeah. Are you reading much at the moment?
I'm reading Roald Dahl, a collection of short stories. I'm reading James Bond. I picked up an old series of James Bond paperbacks by Ian Fleming. I'm reading lots of history, Jan Morris's Pax Britannica series, the Elizabethan Underworld, which is very fascinating reading. So I do lots of historical reading. In the Taoist poetry, I read a bit of that every day, sort of keep me centred.
Yes. In today's age of communication, there's a trend to reduce the amount of time travelling. It's the old. I mean, you mentioned it before about the tyranny of distance versus the immediacy of social media. How do you manage living in Australia and working with these people in the United States?
Wonderful. It's the first time in history that you've ever been able to do it. We have this expression in Australia, the tyranny of distance, because we're this little island way out in the southern hemisphere, miles from anywhere, and it's very hard to build those traditional relationships with publishers and editors, with collaborators, before you have to use mail, and then there was email, and that makes it a bit easier again, and then there's social media, which is great because you can get on and you can be chatting with editors about gardening or cooking or motor cars or football or whatever. And before you had to be in New York to have those kind of conversations. And now you can have relationships with people from a vast distance. So it allows you to have a career, an international publishing career, an overseas publishing career, whereas before you would have to stick with the local market. And Australia has a very vibrant local genre market, but it's also a very small pool, a very small audience base. So I think it's, I've never tried to make a living in the Australian publishing market, but I think it's, for those people that do it, there's a small number of slots and it's quite challenging and competitive. So social media, I thought, would probably take about the same amount of effort to try to get a publishing career going overseas as it would here. So it's been a great blessing.
So you're a huge fan of technology, and yet with your dream project, you said that you're using a typewriter and scanning it in. How does that work?
I'm very grateful for the blessings that technology affords, but I'm also very wary of it. Our generation, my generation, is in a very interesting historical position. We're kind of halfway on the point between, half of my life has been wired. I've had the internet, I've had email, I've been a very ardent user of those things. But the other half of my life, I never knew those things. We never had internet, we never had email, never had Skype, never had Wi-Fi. And, when you go to the shopping centre now and you see sort of people, in their teens and 20s, they just walk around all the time like this, they're glued to the device. And I worry about how much energy and attention that costs. And I have a very old 1990s sort of Motorola phone that's all cracked and beaten up. I try to spend as little time as I can on the internet, as much as I enjoy the social media aspect of it, because I'm wary how it does cut into your energy and your attention, your writing time, and I really need to keep myself focused to get my writing done every day. So yes, I sometimes work on an old manual typewriter. I have a 1950s Corona Clipper, which is not here. I was going to go get it. But I do have an old Hermes electric down there. So I often work with the typewriter, especially when I'm doing sort of very personal writing projects like the Dream Project. Or I write by hand, and I've written 2 books entirely by hand. No, sorry, one by hand. One book I've written by hand, and the other book I've typed on my old wrought iron Corona Clipper. It's a very different experience, and it's a good one for writers to do. You do realise that for every benefit technology brings, you also lose something from the previous model. So I think there's value in revisiting handwriting and typing and finding what it was that we did lose.
Do you find that the medium that you're using, whether it's handwriting or typewriting or on the computer, does it affect the message? Yeah,
for 2 reasons. Well, for example, I wrote the first draft of my Victorian era detective story on a manual typewriter because I wanted that feel. Technically I probably should have written it by hand in perfect copperplate, but I have terrible handwriting, and the typewriter was close enough to give me that feel of sort of casting type on the page, which is a whole different feeling to using the computer. That ability to undo, where you push the undo button. To writers ruminating, sort of staring at the blinking coal and wondering what they're going to do next and reworking a line over and over or a paragraph over and over to get it just so. So the good thing about the typewriter is that it has that immediacy. You cast the type on the page and you're doing a craft as well as an art. You're sort of bringing something into being in the very instant it forms in your mind. Whereas writing on a computer keeps the work in a virtual space. It's not quite real yet. Even when it's finished, it's still there. And if there's an electromagnetic pulse or something, it can vanish again back into the ether. So yeah, they're very different tactile experiences. I don't know if the end result is different. You still have to draft it and turn it over, but the actual process feels very different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think you'll be using in the future?
Well, I've got one of these MacBook Airs that's very thin and very light, and I do my morning writing shift at a cafe, and I find that very, very helpful. It's not too heavy. It's got a long battery life. The keyboard's sort of well designed. It suits me. So I tend to do most of my contracted, my professional work on that. And now I just sort of keep the typewriter for personal projects like this Aspect Moon project.
So you don't carry the typewriter to the coffee shop where you work?
No, it would drive everybody batty. Technically a portable. It's the laptop of its day. So it comes in a big sort of wooden box that sort of was like about the same weight as a bowling ball. Yeah, that's exactly. You walk around, sort of carry it like this, and you can even write with it within the box. The box lid opens up, and it's anchored within the box, and you can type, and the pages come out the top and fall into the space behind. So it's one of the interesting things about a typewriter is you're good to go wherever you are. You don't need power. You don't need a printer. You don't need that one typewriter even lasts me a whole year. I think my total outlay on that's like about $5. So no toner, no power, no additional devices needed. You're good to go.
Wow. So it's the ideal instrument for the impoverished writer in the garret as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They should be doing everything on. But you then have that great fear though. You've got your 120,000 word finished manuscript, and what if something happens to it? What if something drives off with your car and that's sitting there in the driver's seat? So you have to get on the photocopier, or once I've got a handwritten or a typewritten draft, I transcribe it onto the computer for editing. Also because I don't know if publishers will ever take a typewritten or a handwritten manuscript anymore. I think that boat has sailed now, so they just do it in an electronic format.
Yeah. So do you have any new projects coming up that we haven't talked about that you can talk about?
Well, Wolf's Empire is definitely going ahead with Claudia. But it's just a matter of we still waiting to sign contracts on it and iron out all the details. So we've accepted an offer. But yeah, so we're just working. So yeah, apart from that, we can't say any more. But yes, it's going to be a very exciting project. We've been working on it since 2009. So we've built a very comprehensive world. The premise is, what if the Roman Empire never fell and expanded out into space? So we've built a galactic Roman Empire with worlds and provinces, galactic provinces that span vast distances. And in place of so many of the elements that people are familiar with from the ancient Roman Empire have sort of kept on going. So instead of enslaving other people, the future Romans now enslave aliens, and they name them for the historical tribes that they once enslaved or battled against in ancient Rome. And it pans out very well for science fiction because they have very sci-fi, alien-esque sounding names. So there's the Sauromatei, the Ichthyophagi, they have these names that lend themselves very well to alien races.
So do you have any more ideas percolating with new projects coming out?
Not really, because
you're just too busy.
I literally have 16 projects on the go at the moment in various stages of development, so I don't have a lot of time to think about new things. I'm just currently working on keeping all of those projects chugging along and making sure they come out as best they possibly can. And then most of them are serial projects. So with Wolf's Empire, if that first book goes well, then we've already got another 3 lined up behind that, plotted out. And all the other projects are the same. The children's sci-fi book I'm working on, we're working on the first one of those, and there's potential for another 3 or 4 sort of coming in behind that. So, excuse me, that's my mobile phone.
Yeah, well, can you please keep us posted with any new developments? It'd be really interesting to follow what's happening. It's really good to see more sci-fi coming out as well.
Thanks, Nalini. And yeah, I'm always on social media, so Twitter and Facebook. If anything happens, that's the first place it gets announced. So, and you know, Claudia's got a very large following there on Facebook as well. So we tend to announce around the same time, especially if, you know, we're working on those collaborative projects. So to Twitter and Facebook, and next time we have something important to talk about, I'd love to come back and chat about it with Dark Matter.
That'd be fantastic. Well, thank you very much for talking to Dark Matter.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Nalini.